Hello, and welcome to the first episode of the Culture Beats podcast, featuring conversations about pop culture and many other aspects of life. I'm your host, Chris Bournet. This episode tackles a thorny issue that affects all of us: money. Financial coach Diamond Zimmerman gives tips on how to get out of debt, stay out of debt, save, and invest. These tips are especially relevant for those of us who are artists, writers, filmmakers, musicians, and other creative types. Since many of us bankroll our own projects, how do we avoid getting in over our heads with credit card debt, loans, etc.? Is it possible to achieve financial freedom and live the life of an artist? Diamond and I cover all of that and more in this episode. Without further ado, here's our conversation. Well, Diamond, thanks again for making the time to speak with me. I think money it definitely affects everybody, but so many of us have such a very limited understanding of it. So first of all, could you kind of give people a little introduction and tell people about yourself and what you'd like them to know about you and your relationship to money?
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me, Chris. This is my first podcast. So I'm super excited and a little nervous, but
Oh,
whenever we
great to
start
have you.
talking about money, because that's such a passion for me. So I'm really honored to be here and to share with your listeners and people who might get a hold of this podcast, what God has shared with me and a little bit about my money story, my money traumas, and my money journey. So I was born and raised right here in Columbus, Ohio. So I'm a homegrown girl. Graduated from Fort Hays Arts and Academic High School. I know we had that in mind. Class of
Yep.
'93.
Fort Hays
Yeah,
alum, class of
right,
90.
right.
Yep.
And grew up on. I was actually born and raised at 21st in Cleveland. My mother had me when she got pregnant at 14.
Hmm.
Delivered short at 15. She had been 15 very long before I came out. So majority of her pregnancy, she was 14. So I was raised by my grandmother because my grandmother, her children started having children very young. And so I like to say that we grew up poor. We couldn't afford the apostrophe. Christmases were sponsored by the Salvation Army. And it wasn't that my grandmother didn't love me, but people can't give you what they don't have. And so as a child, a lot of people are like, we didn't know we were poor. Oh no, we knew we were poor. But the financial literacy wasn't there. And so I did not grow up being taught about money. We did not grow up with any financial literacy in the home. My grandmother didn't have a budget issue, and I'm sure we'll dive into this later. She had an income issue. She did, and the needs in our home were so great that by the time she got money, we were already behind the eight ball. And once you're behind the eight ball, it's hard to get caught up. So fast forward, I ended up, going to college and got married the first time. And even in that marriage, didn't have any financial literacy. I ended up getting pregnant with twins, and I quickly became a stay-at-home mom because we couldn't afford the childcare. And so there was this disconnect in my marriage of how much money was coming in, how much money was going out, how the money was being allocated, who was responsible for the money, who got to make money decisions, and all of those things that come with joining your bank account, buying a house together, having debt together, raising kids together, all of the things. And it was during that marriage and those angst and those questions that I had, and some of the pushback that I got for asking financial questions, right? I was the dutiful wife. I was supposed to not worry about where the money was coming from. I wasn't privileged to know how much money was in the bank. Things were being taken care of for me, and I was supposed to be grateful for that, right? It was during that, but that never set well in my spirit. And so I wanted both of us to go and get some financial literacy. And I was given some pushback on that. And that, amongst other things, led to a divorce. But it was in the process of that divorce that I felt the tug to, and then immediately after the divorce of, okay, now you really got to get your money together, because there were some things that happened as a process of that divorce that completely threw me for a loop. What was once joint all of a sudden wasn't. And I needed to get organized with my money, and I needed to get organized real quick. And so that perpetuated this journey of me educating myself, understanding what I needed my money to do, setting money goals, understanding my money stories and money traumas. And that's how I became financially literate.
Right. So tell me about Much LLC and the kind of services you offer.
So I do. I've had an LLC now for a little over a year. Shout out to my previous boss. Her name is Monica Jones, and she's a member of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women. In addition to other organizations, she was my boss during my time at CODA. I used to work for the Central Ohio Transit Authority, and Monica, God love her, Monica was like, Diamond, you are always helping people with money questions when they come down here. Like, I hear you. I hear them come down with these questions. You need to get an LLC. And I was like, oh, like, no, ma'am, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm not trying to start nobody's business. But she was like, oh, no, you can and you should. So I immediately got this LLC and I titled it Little is Much. I am a woman of faith. I do believe in Jesus Christ crucified, resurrected, lives forevermore. That being said, there is a verse in the Bible that says, little is much in the master's hands. And I think for me personally, for Black folks, we think that even though we're really good at making a dollar out of 15 cents, I know my grandmother was, we think that you have to have six figures or more in order to live on less than you make, in order to make ends meet, in order to invest in all of these money myths, I call them. And so Little is Much was born. And just to tell you a little bit, I am a money coach. I'm a certified money coach through the AFCPE, which is a long acronym for Financial Planning, Education, and Counselors. But I specialize in teaching women of color how to budget and live on less than they make, how to create a debt reduction plan, how to understand their money stories and money traumas. And I know I keep saying that. We'll talk about it here in a minute. And then how to build a starter emergency fund. Because what we know is life is always lifing. And it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when life comes for you. If you have no money in the bank, and most Americans don't, you end up getting stuck. And once you're behind, it's hard to get caught up. I want to be very clear. I am not a financial planner. I am not a financial advisor. And so as a coach, again, those four pillars is what I teach women how to do. Investing, I have somebody who does that. I do invest. I do not have a license to invest. And that's not where I wanted to put my focus. My job is to get our people ready to go and see an investor, right? So I can tell you what I do and how I do it, but I'm going to point you in the direction of somebody who's licensed to do that. And I think for financial planning, financial advising, a lot of our people don't see themselves in those spaces because financial planning, financial advising, wealth building is still a very old, rich white man world, if we're being frank. And so if I don't go to an office and see somebody who looks like me, for our community, these money conversations, not only are they taboo, we're not talking to each other about money, we're not talking to our family about money. I definitely don't want to go to some, white man who's got money on top of money on top of money and have him try to explain to me how I can invest. Some of these firms, you also have to have a minimum amount in order to even become a member of the firm. And so there's all of these barriers, if you will, that because that system, the financial system, the banking system was never intended for us to succeed or be a part of, that it's a barrier to entry, right? And so I don't want to go see somebody who don't look like me, but if I can talk to a woman who has been a single mom, who is divorced, who is the first person in her family to go to college, who also didn't grow up with financial literacy, then that hits a little different. And now we can have an honest conversation because I feel like somebody understands where I am or where I'm coming from, or won't make light of the goals that I have as I start small. Right. So I just wanted to be very transparent with your listeners about what I do, what I don't do. But I can tell you what to do because I can tell you what to do. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
I just want folks to know it is my lived experience. I am completely debt free with everything except my home. I will have that paid off in the next 3 years. I'm very excited about that. And I've been able to set some money goals that were far reaching to be able to help my family in a way that I didn't know that I would when I first set out. I just set out to get some financial literacy so that I could be a good steward over what God gave me, right? I just wanted to get organized with my money so that I could make $1 out of 15 cents because I was starting all over after a 10-year marriage. I did not know that paying attention to my credit score, that living on less than I made, that participating in my 401k and not leaving money on the table, and some of the other lessons that we'll share with your listeners today, were going to have a great ripple effect for me to be able to do things for my now adult children and my grandchildren. I wasn't thinking about that when I wanted to get organized. But having that financial literacy and employing some of the tips that I'll give people today brought about not only financial freedom for me, I'm not necessarily independent yet. That's me working when I want to work with who I want to work, as long as I want to work, or not at all, right? I'm not financially independent, but I do have freedom in that I don't lay awake at night wanting to know how I'm going to pay my bills. I always say, if you got to lay awake at night wondering how you're going to pay for something, it's not a blessing, it's a curse.
Oh, yeah.
So being able to know where my money's going, where it is, how to grow it, and even say the words like net worth. I have one. I track it. I'm growing it. Tremendous blessing. And so glory and honor to the Most High for the desire that he gave me, because I wasn't smart enough to know you need to get right with this money. Like, that desire came from God to say, let me show you how to do this. You're going to have to go get some education. And that education is going to give you some skill sets. And then when you get that skill set, you can put it into practice. And after you put that practice in, that brings about transformation, right? Okay. And that's what Monica, my boss, would always say, the path to transformation is getting some awareness. Because once we don't know what we don't know, you get some awareness, and then you get some education. You get some education, you get some skill sets. You take that skill set and you put it into practice. And once you've got that thing in practice, transformation comes about. And that's what financial literacy did for me. And that's what I hope it can do for some of your listeners.
Awesome. So you mentioned, you kind of touched on this, but how does someone with a modest income, most people, like you said, are just trying to keep their heads above water. They're just trying to make rent every month. I mean, the concept of saving and investing and even putting money away for an emergency is like, seems out of reach to a lot of people. So if you have a modest income, how do you do that? How do you, and also how do you avoid debt? Because for a lot of people, credit cards are the way they pay for emergencies.
100%.
If they have a car repair or anything else, that's unexpected, they whip out the credit card, and it's like a vicious cycle. They never get it paid off, because there's always, the interest, and then there's always something else that comes up. So if you have a
100%.
modest income, how do you even start to
really good question. So a couple of things that I think I want to make sure that I get on the table. If people don't hear anything else that you and I talk about today, because we're probably going to cover a lot, there are a few things I want folks to know. Number one, nobody's going to care about your money more than you. Full stop. Whether you have a little or a lot, nobody is more invested in watching your money, helping your money grow, making sure you have enough to live than you are. So that's one of the first reasons it's important for us to get organized with our money. Two, it's not about how much money you make. It's about how much money you save. And so part of your question is, we're going to dive into how do I save? Because again, little is much, especially, and I don't make six figures. I want to put that out there too. People always assume, especially in our culture, that in order for you to live a productive life or a prosperous life, you got to be making a minimum of 100 grand. It is not about how much money you make. If you save right, then when these emergencies come and life comes for you, you'll be prepared. The last thing I want to say before I answer your question in full is it's never too late to get organized with your money. I have, a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, and even some loved ones that are like, I'm over 50, I'm over 60. What's the point, right? Everything that I've done, everything that ain't been done up until this point ain't gonna get done. I'm either gonna be ready for retirement or I'm not. Like, it's too late. It's never too late. If the Lord gave you breath in your body today, yesterday is gone, tomorrow's not promised. You do have today. And we're not only supposed to be good stewards over our money, we're supposed to be good stewards over our time, right? It's the only commodity that we don't know how much of it we have. We can't get any of it back, and we don't know how much is left. So the way in which we can enjoy the life that God has given to us, one of those ways, one of the many ways, is to get organized with our money. So to answer your question, how does somebody get started? I live on a budget. one of the very first things I learned in the books that I was reading, and I'm definitely going to give these resources because the books that I started reading changed my life. Budget was always a dirty word. And in fact, in my house, we didn't say the word budget because there wasn't. My grandmother didn't have a budgeting issue. She had an income issue. Her kid, my grandmother had 4 children. Her children were all having children at a very young age. And so there wasn't enough money coming in. And the needs of the household were great. My grandmother had a modest income, but by the time that money came in, it was already accounted for, right? One of my money stories, and when I talk about money stories to people who don't know what that is, I'm referring to money is emotional, right? And there are things that happen in our childhood or in our just throughout our lives, in our lived experience that shape how we think about money, how we feel about money, if we love it, if we hate it, if it's a source of anxiety for us. And those stories shape how we move with money. It also impacts our abundance, right? Because you don't attract what you don't think you're worthy of. If you think money is dirty, because sometimes we hear that in our congregations too, if you get caught up in the prosperity gospel of naming and claiming and blabbing and grabbing, and we won't go there because we don't have enough time. Father in heaven. But those stories shape you. So one of my money stories that I remember very vividly of, and it speaks to this piece on credit too. So bear with me. My grandmother was blind. My grandmother was born blind, Stevie Wonder blind. And there was a grocery store around the corner from us. At one point in time, my grandmother lived off of Joyce and Hudson. She lived on Blake. And there was a grocery store. Anybody who knows this, who lives in the Columbus from up north, knows that there was a Food World on Joyce and Hudson, right? Mm-hmm. And my grandmother would put an X on the back of her check, and we would go to the grocery store. I got my license at like 14 because I was my grandmother's driver. And, you could do that in Ohio. So we go over to Food World, and Miss Rose would cash my grandmother's check. And Miss Rose would say, Miss Parrish, you owe me $50 or $75 from the groceries that you got on credit last week. Okay. Me as a child never really paid attention to how much money on my grandmother was cashing her check for. But what I did know was my grandmother would get the check, Miss Rose would send out her money. My grandmother would say, tell me where's the 10, tell me where's the 20. She had a change purse that had compartments in it, so she knew where to put her dollars, right? She could feel the coin. She knows a quarter from a penny from a dime. And she would section her money, and she would give Miss Rose back the $50 or $75 that she owed. And we would go grocery shopping. What I knew was before the end of the week, my grandmother was going to send one of us kids back over to Food World because we were going to run out of something. I was either going to be getting a pack of chicken, a loaf of bread, a box of cereal, some milk, some eggs, whatever it was we needed to make it through the next week. Because again, they're only getting paid every 2 weeks, right? So we then gave back that $75. We're going to go back before she gets her next paycheck to re-up. And so every single time that she got her check, there was something that was already gone when she cashed it. And so that was my first experience with credit, right? My first experience with credit was not American Express, Visa, or MasterCard. It was Food World. And whether my grandmother had to sign on a dotted line, sure, there was no interest to it, but the credit was the same. It was, we owe somebody before we can actually take out what's ours, right? And so part of that story for me, as a child, it didn't make me feel any type of way because I didn't recognize that money story until I started getting some financial literacy and realizing like, oh, well, damn, that's where this, now I understand that I have it's not anxiety, but I have a scarcity mindset, right? Because that lived experience triggered something in me and told me that if you don't save, you're always going to be poor. That was part of my mindset. And so now as an adult, I know know that I check my bank account every day. It's one of the ways that I ward off fraud and all of that jazz. I know what should be coming out. I know how much money should be in there. Somebody might say that that's a bit extreme, but I check my bank account every day. I wait for, certain, I've got bills on auto pay because I can afford to do that. And as we check and make sure those things come out, we check it off. Back in the day, it was a checkbook you had a ledger, right? Now we got debit cards or auto pay. And so just me going in there and checking and making sure that the responsibilities that I've already paid for have been removed. And nobody, and I don't have any unauthorized charges, right? I don't have a subscription that I forgot to write down, or, oh, I forgot I did, Zelle my daughter that $100 or whatever. Helps me do that. And so I know how much money I need to see in my checking account in order to woosah. And that's part of my scarcity mindset. So it's really important that people sit and think for a minute, because money is emotional. If you're somebody that does not like to open their bills, if you are somebody who does not pay your credit card on time and in full every month, not only are those things pulling down your credit score, which right now the credit score, the FICO score, all of that is a game, right? It's about you being able to present on paper to banks and other people who are lending you money that you are credit worthy, right? And the game was never set up for people of color to be successful. But in order for us to operate in society, we have to play the game, right? And so just being able to give us those tools of, yes, don't spend more than a certain amount of your credit limit, because that's a ding on you. Making sure that you're paying more than the minimum payment on your credit card, or that's a ding on you. Paying your bills on time, even your utilities. Right now, certain utilities are part of your FICO score. Everybody doesn't know that. Like, that's not common knowledge. But you paying your electric bill late, your cell phone late, you having reconnecting charges, all of that can ding your credit. So everybody wants to go to credit reporting or credit consolidation. You can do that on your own, and little as much can help you do that. You don't have to pay somebody to do that for you, but it's you getting organized to know what's coming in and what's going out. So if you're making, no matter how much money you're making, because again, the vast majority of us do not make six figures. To your point, you having a budget to tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went is the first step. Very few of us have sat down and written out an entire list of everything that we pay in 1 month. I mean, everything. Your eyelashes, your hair appointments, your utilities, food, clothing, shelter, transportation, utilities, subscriptions, eating out, all of it. You got so much going into. Back in the day, they called it a Christmas club. My grandmother belonged to a credit union.
I remember that.
Right? Yeah. And it was a Christmas club, but so much of her check would automatically go. And then in October, late October, the credit union would send her a check and say, this is how much money you had in your Christmas fund. And then it would go Christmas shopping with that money, right? I don't think now they don't do that, but we call them sinking funds. And you can develop a sinking fund, and we can talk about that too, for your insurance and things of that nature, similar to a Christmas club. But you just sitting down and looking at how much money do you have coming in, whether that's monthly or biweekly. I do it biweekly. I started making a budget. I spent every penny on paper on purpose before I got the paycheck. I knew what my check was going to be. I knew what bills needed to be paid with that paycheck. If it wasn't written down, it didn't get done. I made sure when I started my debt reduction, I was current on all of my bills, minimum monthly payment. We're going to work that payment down. I do what's called a zero-based budget. So if I start out with $2,000, I'm putting down if my rent's due, my car note, my groceries, my daughter's going on a field trip, I need a new suit because I got a job interview coming up, like whatever it is that needs to be done within that next 2 weeks with that $2,000, I put the dollar amount beside it with the due date and spend it down. When I get to zero, you're done. You can't spend what you don't have, right? And if it's not written down, it's not getting done. If it's a credit card and I'm just getting started and I'm trying to get back on my feet, what they gonna do? Come and repossess it? They not. So he gonna get paid when he get paid, right? But just for starters, because the majority of us have never written down a budget at all, it is eye-opening to see what you're spending every month, right? So we start there and we make sure that we are current on all of our bills. And in that budget, we start having questions, or I start asking you questions as your coach as to what really should be in this budget, right? Because I could tell you what you value by what you spend your money on. If you give me your bank statement and I go down and see your expenses, see what you done put on that debit card, see what you done got on that credit card statement, I can tell you what you value real quick. But we redirect our money based on the goals that we have. And most of us have never sat down to make sure that we have more money coming in than we have going out, right? Because that's the first step. Putting everything that you have down on paper to see it in black and white hits different than you guessing. And once you do that and you're able to see, it's eye-opening for you. And then you're able to make some very different decisions as to what you can cut. If you've got more money coming in than you got going out, then you don't have a budgeting issue. But now we need to decide, where is it that you want your money to go so you can start filling those buckets, whether that's vacation, whether you've got a child that you want to buy a car for. I had to buy my own car. That was a possibility. My kids are a little bit different. To God be praised, you know. But whatever that looks like, you putting a down payment on a home, you need new living room furniture. It's your life, it's your money, and they're your goals. But if you don't have goals, the money will leave you just as quick as God gave it to you. So that's critically important. And then once you do that, we can start putting in your budget those things that are important to you. You may decide that it's not as important to you to get your eyelashes done as frequently, that you would much rather reallocate that money to something else because you really want to be there for your girlfriend's wedding and she's doing a destination wedding. It allows you to think about where your money is going differently when you see it on paper. It also allows you to see what you are paying, if you're paying your bills on time, if you're paying your bills in full, if you're late. It changes your mindset. And once you understand how you operate with your money, you can make very different choices about money. And so having that on paper, and then having that honest conversation with yourself, because this is a lot of introspective work, right? You can go to YouTube, you can go to social media, heaven forbid, and get any type of system to build a budget, to do a debt reduction plan. But I humbly submit to our people, if you don't know your why, those systems won't matter. You'll never stick to it. Because budgeting it can be difficult, especially if you're someone like you who's an entrepreneur, you have an irregular paycheck, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know, that depends on the project that you have. It depends on the deadline of the project and when you're going to be paid. It depends on if you've got goods or services that you're selling. You know, if you're somebody who's baking and cooking, you could have an up month and then you could have a down month, right? And so your budget is going to look a little bit different based on the money that you have coming in. But for those of us with hourly jobs or getting paid bi-weekly, getting organized and asking ourselves, what do we want our money to do for us? And being honest with ourselves, right? Because you and I talked a little bit about this. I said, you know, the social media piece for us, everybody says, Diamond, are you on social media? I'm not. And I have a few reasons personally that impacted my safety early on as to why I'm not. But my experience with social media is, number one, everybody who won it ain't living the life they claim about.
Right.
Whether that be influencer or whatnot, what have you. Number two, it's very difficult to get financial literacy in a 30-second soundbite on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, right? You don't have context. And so the other piece of that is when somebody sits down with me and they start telling me about their lives, for us, for our people, this money piece has to start with a conversation. I got to trust you before you can start pouring in my life and talking to me about something as intimate as my money. I got to trust you before I just start taking your advice on where I should be putting my money, realizing that you're coming from a place of love and you have my best interest in heart, but you also not going to impugn my dignity or shame me, right? I don't want to feel ignorant in your presence. And so we need to be having these honest conversations with one another about, I always ask clients, like, when you got money questions, who in your family are you talking to? Is there anybody in your family that's sound, who you know makes good financial decisions, who's doing well for themselves, that you trust and respect enough to go and say, I got this question or I got this problem, how should I handle this? Because what we don't have is a problem with borrowing money from one another, right?
Right.
Or sometimes we call it borrowing, but it ain't really borrowing. What I meant, what I had meant was, can you give me this and not
Yeah.
expect it back, right? And so even that becomes a tangled web, because if you're somebody who has a good job, or you're somebody who's the first in the family to make it big, the expectation is if there's a need, you should be providing it, right? Or now you're being called bougie, or you think you better than, and all that other stuff. But if I'm being a good steward over what God has given to me, what absolves you of the responsibility to be a good steward over what God has given you, regardless of how much you have, right? But in addition to that, what made you think that you was entitled to what God gave me? Don't worry, I'll wait.
Right.
And now we acting funny for with one another. Because if I did give it and I didn't have it to give, but now I see you buying a Michael Kors purse or going on vacation because you didn't post the pictures for the gram, but you owe me money and you ain't gave it back. But now you mad at me for checking you. Why am I coming to you asking you for something that you know you already owe me? Now there's gonna be some furniture moving up in this piece and everybody mad at me, right? And so, but again, these are real things in our culture, and I'm not talking for nobody else's family. I'm just talking about mine. I'm not talking about y'all. I'm just talking about me. Because I was the bougie one, not because I had a lot of money, but because my family members perceived that because I had been to college and because I was on this financial literacy track, that clearly I was doing well. But they had no idea well is relative, right? I was a newly divorced woman with 3 kids. What you mean well? Because the sister got a good job with a 401k that she's still trying to grow? Like, and again, I'm saying we're not having honest conversations in our families about money situations. And so until we start getting honest with ourselves, and until we make it normal for us to start having these conversations in family, financial literacy may always be an uphill journey for us, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. We need to give ourselves permission to say no. We need to hold folks accountable. If I can't afford to give it without it coming back, I'm not going to give it. And in my head, I didn't want you coming back to the well to dip again. So my fear was, if I give it, even if I gave it in earnest because I felt led, or I love my nieces and my nephews, or I didn't want your utilities to get cut off, or whatever the case was. Now I think that you're going to have the inkling in your mind that because she gave it once, she can come back and I can come back and do it again. And I didn't want to stop that. So for me, I didn't have to stop something if I never started it. So whenever a family member would ask me for money, I would just politely say no. It cost me, and that's okay, because I wanted to be a good steward of what God had given to me, and He had given me a family. My children were my responsibility. And I didn't have anybody in my family that I could fall back on. Sure, you're asking me for help, but who am I going to ask for help if I need it? Right? Honest conversations. So once we get organized with our money, it gives us permission, and it gives us a freedom to be able to say no. Because I have some family members who are just like, I don't think God is going to be pleased with me if I say no. If I knew that a family member had a need, but I didn't give it, does that make me a bad Christian? It doesn't. The Bible says a man that doesn't take care of his own house is worse than an infidel. Wow. Well, we don't know that scripture.
Right.
We didn't know that. The Bible says that to whom much is given, much is required. Crickets. There's all of these things around money, but because it's taboo for us, and because we don't have people in our family that we can talk to about, and because we don't know the rules of the game, we really are perishing for lack of knowledge. Which brings me to my next point. The knowledge is out there, but we have to go get it.
Right.
Nobody's going to knock on the door and say, I hear you got some money problems. You want to talk about it?
Right.
We're not getting it at home. And yet I go back to, I have empathy for that because it wasn't that my family didn't love me, but they couldn't give me what they didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother did the best she could with what she had. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't her fault. She didn't have a lot. The need was great and the dollars were few. But I can't teach what I don't know. And so even when I did get a good job, nobody was talking to me about a 401k. Even the company wasn't talking to me about a 401k. Well, okay, so pause, commercial break. So we done went to college, right? We done got these jobs. We got this 401k, but the organization doesn't say anything about how to log into it, what it is, what it does. They do tell you that it's just screw your money, right? And we're going to match up to this point. Most folks don't even know what that is. If I
Mm-hmm.
don't come from any kind of financial literacy, what do you mean a match? So folks can get a job, but not opt into a 401k on
Mm-hmm.
day one.
Mm-hmm.
Because our system, the American system, doesn't opt you in and make you opt out, right? It's not an automatic thing. You have to select, you have to go in and say, this is how much I want you to take out of my paycheck. People here, especially us who are not making six figures, and I don't know, maybe some who are making more than six figures feel this way, but I'm only speaking to my folks. I was born on welfare. We had Section 8, that whole night. So I'm talking to us. I'm talking to my people. I'm talking to Ray Ray and them who know where I'm coming from.
Uh-huh.
We weren't told how much money we needed to be saving. And I'm talking percentage wise. So just the other day, my daughter's dating. She's 22, she's dating. And the young man just got a new job and he's in construction. And I love this for him because, our brothers, we need people in the pipeline. They don't have enough plumbers, electrician, construction, coda bus operators.
Yeah.
Those jobs have good benefits. They are, they have unions, right? Mm-hmm. So you get steady raises, but it's a skill and you come out making really good money. That grandbrother's 25 years old, he's making $30 an hour, right?
With no college debt, right?
Right. And no college debt, that part. So he came and I congratulated him on his new job. And he said to me, I said to him, hey, young man, how much are you putting in your 401k? And he said, oh, I'm glad you asked. They just talked to us about that. He said, I was talking to some dude, and the dude was like, I asked him what he was doing, and this dude, white dude, he said, I'm putting in 10%. And I said to myself, oh no, that's just way too much. Like, I ain't doing that. And I said, yes, you are. And he was like, ma'am. And I said, listen to me. Listen, scoot up on the edge of your chair real good. You're 25. When you go back to that office and they give you that W-2, you are putting down 10%. Asked Miss Diamond why. And he said, why? And I said, because you're 25. You ain't got no kids. You ain't married. It's pre-tax dollars. And you're going to let compound interest do its thing. What's compound interest, Miss Diamond? Great question, great conversation. Wait, you said something about pre-tax dollars? What's pre-tax dollars? Great, let's have this conversation. Because see, we take for granted that everybody knows what this is. We take for granted that our kiddos know what this is. How are they supposed to know if nobody tells them? And the organization isn't going to tell them. Hell, they didn't tell you. So yes, this is, and I had to explain to the young man, this is on the gross, not the net. The net's what you bring home, right? And so for those of us who are not making six figures, when I hear my sisters say they can't afford to save, I let them know, boo, you can't afford not to. And here's why. The more money you save, the government gives you a discount, right? They literally put you in a lower tax bracket. They reward you for saving. So you end up paying less taxes. And in some cases, you may get back a larger tax refund because you saved. So I was telling him, for example, if you put away $100, most of us believe that when we say we're going to put away $100, then that means your paycheck is going to be less $100 when you come home, right? But we're wrong. For every $100 that you put away because it's pre-tax dollars, you're actually only bringing home less $30. You save 70, you only paid 30. So if I was telling him, if you've got a check that's $1,000 and you say you want to put $100 away every pay period, the check that you bring home is actually going to be $970, not $900. And he said, thank you for telling me, because I didn't know that. And then we went back and explained that compound interest is time. And somebody needs to tell our people that you need to save early and often. And saving money right now, when you have no expenses, you're not married, and you don't have no kids, when you save that money and you're putting it in the stock market, and the stock market always rebounds because you're not going to touch that money for 30 years, 40 years, when you look up, that compound interest has done a magic thing. And now at 25, you will be able to retire with a nice nest egg at 50 and not have to worry about it, because you saved early and often. So later, when you do get married and you do have kids, now you don't have to put away in your later years the same amount of money that you were putting away early on, because you did the work. Nobody teaches us that. Right? But that's the key to wealth building. Saving early, saving often, understanding compound interest, letting it do its thing, explaining what a 401k is. You need to be put in a minimum of 10%. Period, point blank, end of discussion. Your magic number from now till Jesus comes, the same way you tithe 10%, you need to put 10% into your 401k every single time. And here's the other piece that we don't tell them too. Companies always have a match, right? Some companies match 3%, some companies match 6%. He said, oh, I don't get the match. What does the match mean? So I explained what a match is, but I said, you always want to make sure that even if you didn't want to do the 10, I'm telling you to do the 10. Don't worry about the 4. The 4 is free money. What they're saying to you is, for every 1% that you put in, I will put in 1% up to 4. So you're putting in 10, they're going to put in, so your 4 is covered, right? But that's free money. So if you weren't going to do, even if you weren't going to do the 10, I would say you have to do the 4, because if you don't do the 4, they won't do the 4. And now you're leaving money on the table, and we want all of it. My goal as your coach is to help you keep as much of your money in your pocket as I possibly can. That's what we're doing here. To figure out what's coming in, what's going out, what can we get rid of. Debt reduction is crucially important, because you nickel and dime yourself. The more money you have going out every month, the less money you have in your pocket. So let's cut this debt out, and let's figure out how to manage it, because what we're not going to do is get ourselves out of debt only to go right back in debt.
Right.
But the folks that I know, and myself included, when I got out of debt because it was so much hard work for me, you couldn't pay. I was like, credit card, who? Well, I got one now, but that credit score gave me the ability to have a very high credit limit with a very low interest rate. And banks don't like me anyway. They have a term for people who pay their credit cards off every month. Do you know what that term is? Because I know that you do too. They have a term for us in the industry. Do you know what we're called? People who pay their credit cards off every month.
No.
Hold on to your seat.
Okay.
We're called deadbeats.
Oh, wow. The opposite of what we are.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
We are called, you know why we're called deadbeats?
Why?
Because they don't make any money off of us.
Right.
They're banking on the fact that, number one, when I give you a $500 credit limit, you're definitely going to spend the 5. Anytime you spend more than 30%, the industry says don't spend more than 30% of your credit limit, right? I stick with 10 because I got a scarcity mindset, right? I know where it comes from. I don't spend more than 10. And then when that bill comes, I pay it off. You don't get no interest from me. So I use the bank's money. That's all that credit card is. Diamond, we're going to give you a limit. I'm not going to go over that limit. But if I go more than 30%, they get nervous. Well, she's at 50%. We gave her a $500 credit limit. She spent $250. That says to them, she runs the risk of not paying it back. And that makes them nervous. That's called your debt to income ratio, right? They don't want you to have more debt than you have money coming in. They already know what your paycheck stubs are because you had to, on the application, you had to state how much money you make a year, right? Same for the house. So they're taking all of your collective consumer debt. They're looking at your house or your rent. They're looking at your car. They're looking at your credit card statements. They don't like for you to have more that you owe than you have coming in because that gives you a higher debt to income ratio, and that takes your score. So there's all these different kind of ways that I teach my clients how to improve their credit score. And here's the thing, you didn't get in debt overnight. You're not going to get out of debt overnight. This thing is a journey. But the lessons that you learn are going to change your mindset. And when you change your mindset, you change your behaviors. And when you change your behaviors, your money grows because now you're paying attention in a way that you weren't before. And that's the beauty of getting organized with your money, right? Teaching our young ones about the importance of their 401k, the importance of paying their bills on time and in full. We teach them the lessons that weren't taught to us. And that's the way that we help them build wealth, and they end up not having to struggle as much as we did. When we know better, we do better, but we can't teach what we don't know, right? So it's important for us to get that financial literacy. And we can do that a myriad of ways. You and I have favorite books that we talked about and we can share with your listeners. We've got Netflix specials, we've got podcasts, especially ones like yours. Like there's lots of different ways that people can get this information, but it can't solely be social media. And again, I have to go back to that because people are not paying attention to the fact that some of their favorite influencers or favorite folks they're listening to or watching on social media might be up to their eyeballs in debt, but that goes back to that intrinsic and internal inspection of what do you want your money to do? Because if Tamika has different financial goals than I do, and I'm sorry if there's anybody named Tamika, I got a cousin named Tamika and I love her. So that's why I keep saying Tamika. I could say Heather, but that, let me just say Amy. Okay. If Amy's got different goals than I do, right, then I can't do what Amy does with her money because we're going in two different places. And so that's the other thing too. We have to play our game, but you can't know that if you don't know what game you want to play. If you don't know what you want your money to do for you, if you don't have any money goals, because we haven't sat down to think about it. Sitting down is key because you got to get quiet. You gotta, wasn't it Cat Williams who said you gotta be in touch with your star player? Like you gotta ask yourself, don't nobody know but you and God. And at the end of every day, I go back to what I said in the very beginning, which is nobody's gonna care about your money more than you. You trying to impress people that you don't know with money you ain't even got. For what? So you can lay awake at night and pray to God Almighty that He gives you that promotion or that, that money just falls out of the sky. It ain't gonna happen. This is a surprise to you. It ain't a surprise to Him. When He gave His life on Calvary and He said it was finished, that's what He meant. It was finished. He said at the right hand of the Father, He waiting for us to get in alignment, right? Everything that we need to be successful on this side of heaven, we already have. We have to apply it. But you can't apply what you don't know, which means you're going to have, doesn't the word say, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness and all these things shall be added?
Right.
Seek, right? We got to go get it. So the knowledge is out there. Who was it? I don't know. You're the journalist. Who said that if you want to hide something from Black folks, put it in a book?
Oh, wow. I know the quote. I don't know who said it, but yeah.
Shame on me because I don't know. I'm not history buff. I'm a money girl. But that's the notion, right? We don't want to read. Even the word says, study to show yourself approved. A workman need to not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. You know BS when you hear it. Here's the other piece too. You will find that you care absolutely zero about keeping up with the Joneses when you have a plan for your money. What somebody else is doing doesn't impress you at all. I mean, clap, clap, bravo for them. She going to Jamaica, girl. I'm trying to get a house. It's amazing how much you are able to say no to things that don't matter to you when you have a plan for your money. All of a sudden, Sunday brunch at cut winding too, It's fabulous. I've been,
Hmm.
but I'm just saying, right? Maybe that's an occasion piece. Maybe that's a celebration that we do when we're celebrating somebody else and we have budgeted to set that money aside because I knew that that date was coming and I wanted to go enjoy myself. Small wins too. We put it in the budget. When you want to go get a cabin at Hocking Hills, when you want to plan a trip to the Cincinnati Music Festival, I haven't done it yet, but I want to. There is a Black getaway in the Carolinas, and Kwame, it's headed up by, what is Kwame's last name? He's a chef, and he had his debut, if you will, to the rest of the world. He was already doing his thing big time. I love the Food Network. He was on Top Chef.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and he won, and he's a prolific Kwame, Nigerian. Nigerian. Yeah, I don't think he's Ghanaian. Anyway, the brother has a festival, and I saw some things on it on Instagram. But I want to say, I want to go to this festival. It is like and it's at a Black owned and operated resort
Wow.
somewhere in this beautiful spot. And there is music and dancing and food galore and cocktails. And I mean, I'm trying to get my grown woman on and go to this festival. Happens every year. I need to get my dates down, but I'm gonna put my Christmas, bucket and plan and make sure that my Christmas club and make sure that I put money in that fund in my budget to go to that festival. It's not that people used to think that budgets were telling you what you couldn't do and that they were restrictive. It isn't. A budget is simply telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. I cannot impress that upon us enough. We have the ability to do more with less if we get the education, if we take some time to sit with ourselves and understand what we want our money to do for us and the goals that we have, not anybody else's goals, our goals, and then start putting the money in those directions. We would be amazed at how much our money would grow in such a short amount of time and how much peace we would have. It is empowering to know where your money is. It is freeing to not have to worry about it. I will be candid and tell you, you know this, but your listeners don't know. I'm actually in between jobs right now. I accepted an offer for what I thought was my dream job. And because I am in a big transition in my life, and because of some of the workplace trauma I've endured, I got to this organization and right away, I got smacked with bad culture. I have had the privilege of sitting under fantastic transformational leaders. So I know what good leadership looks like. Shout out to Monica Jones. I love you with my whole heart. Shout out to Dr. Alexis Yamakowski. She is doing some phenomenal work right now on burnout. Look her up on LinkedIn. You will be so glad that you did. Shout out to Laura Kaprowski, who is currently the president and CEO of TARTA, the Toledo Area Transit Authority. All of those women were my bosses, and they poured into me. Each of them had a different skill set and a different way of pouring into me and pulling something out of me that I didn't know was there. Really, really grateful for it. They changed and altered my life in a way that I could have never imagined coming out of corporate America. So I knew what good leadership was. These women loved people, and they put people above processes. So because that had been my experience, I got over to this, what I thought was my dream job, and the culture smacked me in the face. And I was like, oh, let me tell you what we won't do. Yeah, no, and left. Why? Because I had been an actor in that movie and I knew how it was going to play out. If this is how you're behaving, we still in the honeymoon phase. I've only been here for 60 days and this is how we turning up already. Guess what we won't do? Sister girl, everything in me said, no, like not gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I sat down and I didn't do it hastily, right? Like I prayed about it. I had anxiety about it. I did it scared, but the Lord said, you can. And because I had savings, I'm now in a position where I can sit down. There's some other things that are going on in life. And so I'm able to grieve. I'm able to be intentional about my next career path. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I hadn't saved. Me saving for a rainy day, I had no idea that in July of 2025 it was going to rain. But thanks be to God, I had it to do. And that privilege, that freedom of allowing me to exhale while I reach out to my network and say, kind of help me figure this out, that I'm talking to my therapist and talking to my career coach and saying, what's my next move? I can still pay all of my bills and help my adult daughter with my grandbabies and not have to worry as God decides where he wants me to be and as I can attune my ear into him to figure out. But that's a privilege, again, that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't saved. What I want folks to know is when you get good with your money, shout out Tiffany LHA, I didn't know then that the ripple effect it was going to have down the pike. I didn't know that me desiring to get organized with my finances, I thought it was just for me to take care of my family, my immediate. I didn't know that later I was going to have a kiddo in college that I was going to be able to help. I didn't know that my son was going to decide one day that he was going to pick up and go to Japan. And he was like, Mom, I need a sponsor. And nobody has any money in the bank but you. I didn't have to give him anything. He paid his way. I got really, really good kids. He worked hard. He paid his cash, but he had to have proof on paper that somebody on this side of the continent could help him in case he got into financial trouble, right? Because he wasn't going with a college or university. They're your sponsor. And he wasn't going with an organization, a corporation. They're your sponsor. When you go as an individual, you got to have a sponsor. And so my son is now living in Osaka as a 22-year-old Black male.
Wow.
He found the school, he got his passport, but I said all that to say, I didn't know that one day he was going to come to me and say, I want to go do this thing, but I need somebody to sponsor me. All I did was give paycheck stubs and a bank statement. But based on that financial, they said, well, yeah, he can come, he's covered. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Like I didn't see that happening. And so my heart's desire is that people who are listening to this podcast understand that they can do it, that it is well within their reach, that it is not about how much money they make, it's about how much money they save. And if they are willing to get honest with themselves and surrender to God and put their stuff on paper, they too can have peace of mind and stability, and their money will start to grow. I cannot tell you. You just gonna have to trust me. Like what you got to lose, right? Like try it, because I'm telling you, it's worked because I had a plan and I worked it, and it's working for me. And I'm not alone. I'm not the first person to do it, and God knows I won't be the last. There are people across this planet that are doing the same thing, living on less than they make, saving for a rainy day, setting their own goals, and taking care of their family as they define success. Not as society defines it, not as their peers define it, and definitely not as capitalistic America defines it. This is your money. It's your life, right? And start today. Start today. Don't put off until tomorrow what you can do today. What you waiting on?
Absolutely. Well, Diamond, that's so powerful that you were able to put that nest egg away. So when you really needed it, you were able to use it as,
Amen.
as a, the
I'm
purpose
grateful.
to give you the resources you need, as you said, as you make this transition. So one thing I wanted to ask you is, you touched on this, is people like me, who are independent filmmakers, who are
Mhm.
authors, who maybe self-publish their own books, as you said, we're basically entrepreneurs. We're funding our own ventures. It's very easy to say, well, Diamond's advice works for someone who, as you said, gets paid biweekly or, has a regular paycheck. What do you say to people like me who are funding our own projects? How do we stay out of debt? How do we not run up our credit cards, trying to make the next, Sinners or whatever? How do we stay out of debt? Should we do grants, try to apply for grants? Should we do crowdfunding? What are some ways that people who are creatives especially, but entrepreneurs in general, how can we stay out of debt and not get in over our heads, taking out loans or mortgaging our house to try to live our dreams? What's some advice for people like me who think, well, we're not quote unquote ordinary?
No, that's a great question. And so the first thing I'm going to say is you guys need a budget. Everybody needs a budget.
Mm-hmm.
The budget is still going to help you live on less than you make, but the budget for you entrepreneurs and you creatives looks different because you're going to list all of your monthly expenses, but because you don't know how much your paycheck is going to be or even when you're going to get it, that budget and seeing what comes in. I always say we're going to build the 5 walls, right? We're going to do food, clothing, shelter, transportation, and utilities. We're going to do those 5 things first because as long as you do those 5, you live to fight another day. So no matter what all of your monthly expenses are, including your credit cards, you list everything, but that way when you get a paycheck, you know how you're going to allocate it, right? You've got your 5 walls. You're still going to do a zero balanced budget. Put that paycheck at the top. Do the things that you need to do. And then as the next one comes in, you'll do the rest, right? To your point about, so that's how your budget would work because you're not putting your guaranteed salary or paycheck at the top and then spending it down. You don't know what that's going to look like. And
Mm-hmm.
some month could be a great month and other months could be a sour month. But as you get it, if you know what your priorities are, you know where you're still telling your money where to go because you've listed it out. And that helps you stay organized with your finances. You are going to look for money everywhere. We're here in Columbus, Ohio. I don't know a lot about federal grants, but locally there is an organization, and most of you creatives are familiar with it. The Greater Columbus Arts Council
Yes.
is city dollars. Those are taxpayer dollars. There's a separate fund that said you can get supply grants every month, $500, or you can do a professional development grant, which I think is up to $1,500. I don't think they've changed that calendar year. So what that means is
Mm-hmm.
if you apply for a professional development grant in December and you get it, that's 2025. In January, you can ask for a fresh 1,500 because it's 2026, right? It's calendar year. And the stipulations for how you get that money back are very, very loose. You just have to fill out a report. I think if you're an exhibitionist where you've got goods that you are preparing, and then you just have to send a supply list of what you're going to buy, what you need it for, when the exhibition is, that kind of thing. But then if it's a professional development piece, you only have to send a screenshot or a flyer of that thing that you want to attend. And then just say, this is what it is, and this is what my airfare is, this is what my hotel stay is, yada, yada. You list all those expenses. I need this for per diem for food. And then coming back, you're just going to write a little report and explain how that will improve you as an artist or what your takeaway was or how that's going to, because for the city of Columbus, when art thrives, the community thrives, right? And so that's the
Well
investment.
said. Yeah.
It's very, very true. And so you're going to go after those local grants. You're going to do your research. We're back to that again. People perish for lack of knowledge. Your new job is finding money. So whether that is a grant that is specific to a nationwide grant or a national grant, or even an international grant that's specific to your medium, film, books, authoring, writing, whatever that is, you're going to see if you can find grants on that level, and you're going to crowdfund. Listen, do some Obama grassroots type stuff. If you've got something out there, Black folks gave, and not just black folks, white folks did too. We believed in the dream. Yes, we could. Yes, we did. You're right. We were given $1, and those dollars were going a long ways. It was a lot of people that were giving a little bit of money. It wasn't necessarily folks that were coming, with $15,000, $20,000. It was the everyday average citizen that says, I don't have much, but I believe in you, and here's what it is. So you're going to do, as an entrepreneur, you're going to do all of that. You're going to go after local grants. You're going to go after industry specific international or national grants, and you're going to crowdfund. You're going to list your budget so that you're living on less than you make. You're not going to max out your credit cards. And the reason you're not going to max out your credit cards is because you don't know when you're going to get a paycheck. And when you do that, it's going to harm your credit score. And we need your credit score to stay in good standing. And depending on your project and the length of it and when that comes in, that credit card just might be your emergency fund. And so we don't want to max that out or take those funds away, because if you have not established a starter emergency fund, or you haven't been able to secure a what if I lose my job, what if life happens fund, then that credit card is going to be your lifeline to your necessities like groceries and gasoline and maybe even shelter, right? So we want to make sure that we have those lines of credit open, so that if life happens and we don't have any other vehicle, then we can pay for them. But yep, you're still going to make a budget, and then you're going to go after those grants with a reckless abandonment.
That's awesome advice.
Yeah.
And like you said, so many of us creatives are just like everyone else. We don't get this. No one in my family was an artist or someone who had produce works that I could go and say, hey, how do I fund my dream, but not get into debt? So like you said, perishing for lack of knowledge. It's the exact same situation.
And real talk, they don't call you guys starving artists for nothing. It takes a minute to put your projects together. It takes time to find funders, and everybody who's excited isn't willing, right? A lot of people get excited about your work. That same excitement doesn't always generate those dollars.
Right.
And everybody loves the project when it's finished. And now the New Yorker and the Post is coming after you, and now you're on the Drew Barrymore show. But in that startup phase, that was really difficult. And so, to thine own self be true. The other thing I will say too is, for those who can, let your 9 to 5 in that budget that I talked about with your expenses, your Christmas club, one of your buckets is funding your business. So you're putting that in your budget. You're putting yourself in your budget, whatever that looks like. You're making space for yourself and pouring into yourself, right? You're fulfilling your dream. And so let your 9 to 5 fund your passion until you are to a point where you can say goodbye to the fluorescent lighting to go do what God has purposed and created and designed you to do on this blue marble for a season. Then let that thing fund you. But that should also be the encouragement and the motivation that you need to live on less than you make, because you care about this thing a little bit more than you care about accounting, right? But that's just to keep the lights on. It isn't what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life. And it isn't what you would do if you could do it for free, right? So we're gonna live on less than we make and not live high on the hog, so that as much of that money as possible to go and fund that thing that gives us life, right?
Yeah, our passion.
Yeah, because your art changes lives.
Wow.
It speaks to people. It brings you make folks feel stuff, whether that's encouragement. And now they saw something in a movie and it didn't matter that it was real. It gave them the unction that they needed to get up and go do that thing. We see ourselves in those characters. Whether you're reading a book, sometimes I'm reading a book and I'm like, I gotta put this down because you all over me right now. Like I feel like you got a camera in my crib. That kind of thing. And that's why we can watch movies and they stir us up. We get invested in that. And so art is life, and whole civilizations die without it. It is political. It is engaging. It is provocative, every medium. And so, thank God for the artists, because y'all breathe us. Y'all make us feel again.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Well, Diamond, I could just talk to you forever. We have to do this again and touch on even more subjects that we weren't able to cover this time. So if people want to
Yeah.
get in touch with you and they want to, get involved with little as much, how do people reach out to you?
I'm gonna be very stingy with my cell phone number because I want folks who are
Sure.
serious
Oh
about
yeah,
the numbers that
you
I'm
don't want
giving.
everybody
So
texting you and
definitely that true that, like
or
right.
calling you. Yeah, yeah.
I heard you on Culture Beats. I got a few words for you.
Yeah.
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the
Mhm.
only social media that I'm at. I'm not on Instagram. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on YouTube. So you can reach out on LinkedIn. I'm simply Diamond Zimmerman. We keep it simple. Or you can email me at Diamond Charlena, but the CHARLENA at outlook.com. Diamond Charlena at outlook.com. And if you reach out and you've just got questions or you want to get started, I am more than happy to help you. You are worth it. And again, my whole goal is to help you keep as much of your money in your pocket as you possibly can. God did it for me. I want to do it for you.
Well, Diamond, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. You are so relatable because, like you said, you've lived everything that you coach people about. So that's what makes your insights and your knowledge so applicable to people's everyday lives. So I cannot say enough. I just appreciate you and appreciate all the knowledge you shared today, all the knowledge bombs you dropped. So thank you again so much.
Thank you so much, my friend. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Continued blessings on all of your endeavors. I pray that the angel of the Lord would go before you and prosper in all of your ways. And thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
If you like this video, please leave a comment, share it, and subscribe to my channel.